Welcome in to another edition of the Creighton Basketball Newsletter. I'm John Niatawa with the World Herald, here to recap the season. Creighton finished its 2020-2021 season in the Sweet 16. So for Creighton, that was a goal accomplished. First Sweet 16 since 1974. It didn't end. The season didn't end in a positive manner, I guess you could say. But then again, it's only one team celebrating in the end, right? There's only one national champion. Everyone's going to have some element of heartbreak. Creighton's came in that Sweet 16 game against Gonzaga. I wanted to talk a little bit about that game. I was there on hand to see it firsthand. And so I had some thoughts, but before I do that, I just wanted to remind you, if you're coming across this video and you haven't yet subscribed to our newsletter, the written version of the newsletter, you can do that really easily. You just go to omaha.com/newsletters. You'll see a tab there that you just click, put a little check mark in there, and bam, you're set to receive weekly updates from yours truly. I've got some exclusive content for Creighton fans. I mean, this thing, it was built and established just for you, the Creighton fan, because we felt like we've got some good stories to tell and some insight to share that maybe didn't quite fit in the traditional newspaper setting, but was still really valuable. And so we've been at it for a couple months now here with the newsletter. It's been a really fun venture, and obviously we're going to keep it going through the off season and into next year. So if you haven't yet, sign up. If you haven't told your friends, tell your friends. Let everybody know that the World Herald's got this thing going on for Creighton fans. But yes, Creighton season, I mean, if you had started the year and you said Creighton would end in the Sweet 16, I think you'd probably feel pretty good about that, because it was a benchmark that Creighton needed to clear and something that was really important to this group of veteran guys. Marcus Zegarowski, Mitch Ballock, Damian Jefferson, Denzel Mahoney, Christian Bishop. They've been a part of the program for a while. They know the history of it and how important it was, not just for them to kind of break down this barrier, but for the fans too. I mean, Mitch Ballock talked about that after the Jays beat Ohio in the second round of the NCAA tournament. And like, he's heard, if you're around the program and the community's pretty tight, like, the players know that fans were ready to see the Jays extend their NCAA tournament stay past one weekend. And so I think the players took it upon themselves, set that as a goal long ago. I talked about that in the last newsletter, the last edition of this thing, where it's been on their minds for a while. So for them to finally get it done, I think that they were pleased. And it probably, for them, I haven't talked extensively to the guys about this, but I'm imagining that it makes sort of all the sacrifices that they had to endure this year, particularly in terms of just the pandemic and the impact that had on their daily lives, staying isolated from society, regular COVID tests, sticking that swab up your nose repeatedly, having to have meals delivered to you, staying in a room by yourself. I mean, the whole team was in a hotel, not able to sleep in their own beds for a full month, from the end of February all the way till the day the season ended. So that was tough. And then you add on top of that this sort of emotional turmoil that came about once McDermott made his comments in the locker room after the Xavier game, comparing the program to a plantation. Obviously, it was hurtful, and the players, they've communicated that, not just publicly, but also internally, and they had to work through that. And so, I mean, it's just a lot that they went through as a group, but then they were able to celebrate, to see them, have a scene in the locker room where they could kind of just take a deep breath, exhale, and say, we did it. I think was pretty rewarding for those guys, and I would imagine pretty gratifying. But obviously it didn't end the way they had hoped. I mean, they were hoping to shock the world or at least keep it competitive with Gonzaga. But a lot of teams have thought that, like, let's just see what happens if we can push this team, this undefeated team, to the brink, keep it within single digits until there's 4 minutes left, and put some pressure on them, because they've rolled through their season, their schedule so far. But the Jays just weren't able to keep up. when you look back on it, while Creighton did shoot, I mean, it was its second worst shooting percentage from 3-point range all year. So the timing of that wasn't ideal, obviously. And the Jays missed a ton of shots in close at the rim, maybe rushed or bothered by Gonzaga's defense. I mean, those guys are really quick to the ball and they swarm pretty effectively. But the Jays, as good as they are, have been offensively, they've had some games where they really just haven't clicked. And, they obviously did not want that to happen against a Gonzaga team. But that, as good, I mean, as good as Gonzaga is offensively, like, its defense is really good too. And I think the Zags did some things to bother the Jays and keep them out of rhythm, just enough to build that separation, enough separation to where then the Jays maybe started pressing a little bit and forcing the issue, because they knew how almost how precise you have to be to crawl back from a deficit. They were down 10 at halftime, and then that lead grew to 15, 16 after the half. But, I think one of the reasons why I think you'll see these Jays players, after the sort of sting wears off from that loss, hold their head up high, not only just because they made the Sweet 16, obviously, but like they played hard. And I think a lot of the way this team is going to end up being defined when we look back on it 5-10 years down the road is sure, it was a lot of fun to see those guys when the offense was humming, and Marcus Zagorowski's burying threes and Mitch Ballock's draining them from the half court logo, and Christian Bishop and Damian Jefferson are catching lobs. Like, they put together a ton of awesome highlight reel moments offensively, and they were really lethal on that end of the court when they were going. And you think back to last year with Tyshawn Alexander, all the things he could do. But their ability to commit to the defensive end and transform the DNA of the program, I think that's going to be the lasting sort of trait or aspect of this team that will ultimately be what we remember about the group. And, their ability they're undersized in a lot of spots. They weren't going to win the sort of athleticism battle. I can't remember, a number of players over the years would talk about, just the sense they got when they're warming up and what the team. Matter of fact, Antoine Jones said this, I believe. Told me in an interview at the start of the year when Memphis, his team, he was on Memphis's team. They played Creighton in the NIT, and he looked over across the court and saw Creighton warming up and was like, "We're going to kill these guys." Like, from just, you look at the body types and you're thinking, okay, we got this group. But then you watch them play and how connected they are, and again, how sort of mentally tough they transform themselves to be, and how committed they were to trying to show some grit and play hard defensively and just do all the little things necessary to get wins. And so they won a lot of games during this core group, this nucleus of Jays, the veteran guys. They won a lot of games during their careers where the determining factor couldn't be identified on the box score. I mean, maybe you could look at steals or blocks or offensive boards, but just so many hustle plays that the Jays made that turned the momentum of games, gave them enough of a lift to help them on nights when maybe the shots weren't falling. And obviously, that was it was a weakness within the program, particularly in key moments during the years leading up to when this group kind of took over and took the reins to try to help this program, take the next step. Obviously, Creighton lost. Creighton had a 3-game losing streak in the NCAA tournament coming into this season. In all of those games, the offense really struggled. And, you're wondering, well, could the defense provide enough of a lift to keep the Jays in it? And it wasn't able to in those games. So to see the Jays lean on that end and embrace that end of the floor defensively was notable. And it brings me back to the Gonzaga game, because I really think that you're going to probably laugh at me for saying this because Gonzaga, what did Gonzaga shoot? Something ridiculous, like 75% from two in that game and started on fire. I think Gonzaga scored 9 of its first 11 possessions and was ahead by whatever it was, 9 or 10 after 8 minutes. But I thought the Jays played really hard and, they worked their way to get second chance opportunities. There was that play in the middle of the first half where 7-footer Ryan Kalkbrenner dives on the floor for a loose ball and it's still loose. And then here comes Denzel Mahoney, flying parallel to the floor and landing on the floor and diving on it and calling timeout. I mean, those plays are what Creighton used to get to to earn a Big East championship for the first time ever last season and to get to the Sweet 16. There were just a lot of moments like that where the Jays showed a lot of heart and toughness. And sure, they were outmatched in that game against Gonzaga, but I think that a lot of the things that they wanted to pride themselves on, aside from making threes, obviously they would have liked to make those, but other things that got them to that point, I thought were still there. And so while they still lost by 18 points and were down by 20 plus at some point in the game, it was basically over 5 minutes into the second half. I do think that the Jays could feel when inevitably when they have an opportunity to look back, they'll feel okay with that one. And maybe this thing doesn't hurt as bad if Gonzaga is able to hold on and become the first undefeated team, undefeated national champion since 1976. I mean, the Zags have been rolling through everybody, and you don't feel as bad maybe if they continue to do that. But man, it was a really fun season to cover. I'm really fortunate that we could have some basketball, and I'm always honored and privileged to be in this position to where I actually get paid to watch the game and then report back to you guys about what I see and what I hear from the players and coaches. So I really appreciate your support and your willingness, those who are watching, to interact with me and follow me and follow my coverage of the Creighton team. Plenty more to get to, obviously. This newsletter is going to be kind of like a look back at the season, but the offseason has begun. And so players are going to leave and players are going to enter. I mean, college basketball transactions is it's wild right now. and so Creighton's going to be going to have a role in that as well, its roster. So we'll see how it looks in a month. It's going to be different, and maybe in 2 months. But, as I guess maybe one of the, I don't know if it's a question or one of the sort of storylines I'll be monitoring is when you think about Creighton peaking in 2014 with Doug McDermott's senior group, having some really impressive performances in the Big East, reaching the Big East championship game, getting that 3 seed in the NCAA tournament, but then those guys graduated, and it took a while. Creighton, had a drop off, and eventually it built back up to the 2016-17 year, where Justin Patton was a freshman, and Maurice Watson, before he got hurt, was leading a team that was undefeated through December, hit number 7 in the AP rankings, and the next year, while Justin Patton left and Maurice Watson was gone, Kyrie Thomas and Marcus Foster led the way, and that team was really potent at times. But then there was a little bit of a drop-off in 2019. The Jays were in the NIT. But then they were back 2020, 2021. So what happens next year is a drop, monitoring the drop-off. There will be one. Obviously, Creighton's going to lose a lot of talented players, but how severe is it? Do the Jays have enough depth and experience to sort of lean on, and can they bolster, their roster with the additions from a recruiting standpoint from the transfer portal? We'll see. But it does seem like the Jays are positioned to withstand maybe a loss of talent, maybe more so than they were when they first entered the league. But they got to prove it first. So we'll see. Again, thank you so much for watching and reading. Appreciate you guys. John Diatalo for the World Herald. We'll be back again soon.